everybody. I'm Unyo here at the monastery, and we have a special event going on today. I wanted to make sure everybody is aware of. I don't know if you all are on our email list, but if not, we want you to be. But we sent out a notice. Today is a big book launch for Sokuzan's, and I'm going to make it light up here. Look at this glowing book called 108 Meditations and 6 Dharma Talks. So I'm going to read the notice that we sent out, and then I believe it's in the chat box too. So today, February 6th, we're asking you right after the Dharma talk, here's what we want you to do. Any time today, but since it'll be fresh in your mind, please do any or all of the following. 1, write a review for the book on Amazon. And if you've already purchased the book, then go in and write a review. So number 1, if you haven't purchased the book, go ahead and purchase it on Amazon and then write a review. Well, wait, I guess you have to get the book first, maybe, right? Number 3, download the free Kindle version. We're giving away a free Kindle version of the book on Amazon, and it's only free from today through the 10th. So it's a free Kindle version. And then 4, share this with any and all your friends on social media or anyone that you think would be interested. And a big bonus today at 3 o'clock on Instagram, on Susan Piver, that's Piver, on her Instagram channel. There will be a live interview from 3 to 3:30 with Sokuzan about the book, and Kevin Townley is going to be the host of that. So that's at 3 p.m. Eastern time today, so mark your alarms right now, and you can join that live chat by going to Susan Piver's Instagram account, and all of you social media savvy people, I know you all know how to do that, so go to her Instagram account, find her, Susan Piver, or you can go to her website as well, which is susanpiver, all one word, .com, and go to her Instagram account through that. So lots of ways to help us out. We're trying to get the reach of Sokuzan's newest book way beyond, as you know, he wants to get in front of as many people as he can while he's still with us here and beyond to teach. Everybody got that now? You've got all your notes? Did I get all the notes? Did I get, okay, I have to look to my social media people here who know how this kind of stuff works. All right, so join the live chat. Here's what it'll look like, if you can see that. There you go. Thank you all.
Greetings, salutations, permutations, congratulations. The topic of today's Dharma talk is Life Comes Without Warning, which is, of course, the expression from the 4 reminders that turn the mind towards the Dharma. Death comes without warning. This body will be a corpse, which is pretty negative, but something you could contemplate. And those 4 reminders are great to help us support our practice from a thinking, intellectual point of view. So life comes without warning. You don't know, you don't have any idea what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. None of us do. We don't know. And actually, we can't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. And if you talk to 10 people about what happened 10 minutes ago, you'll get a different version of everything that shows up Welcome, Christina. So, life comes without warning. What the idea here is to encourage you to take advantage of whatever gap you have that we call the gap or the space in your life to do something to train your mind to see clearly, so that you, when something does come uninvited, something comes rushing down your hallway and into your living room that you did not want to be there, that you are facing that, handling that, working with that with as clear a mind as possible. You may not attain total, complete awakening, but you can have a lot of clarity about the confusion before you actually transcend the confusion and see the confusion and the wisdom are not two different things. That might take more work, but you have to start somewhere. Life comes without warning. A good example is just to pick on somebody. The Junshu a few weeks ago was walking around just fine, and then one little slip on the Michigan weather, ice, and she has a broken ankle, which is coming along good. I understand. You think so? So that's just a very simple example. You might say, how's meditation going to help that? Or how's training your mind going to help that? It's not just that event, it's all the things that show up around that event, all the difficulty, all the confusion. Any event, any life occurrence, anything that comes up is going to be challenging in different ways. And also supporting or supportive in the way you're working with your mind, the way you're working with your life, the way you're working with any aspect of your relationships, insofar as you can. This is not easy, but insofar as you can, find those areas in the mind stream that you can locate, you could say, to use more ideas, pictorials. Find those controls, those dials, those switches that allow you to receive this world. It's not only this world, what's being said to you, but it's what is showing up in the mind stream as maybe a response to what is being said to you. Excuse me. All of that has to be received. When I say it has to be, you can do whatever you want. You can fight with the world if you want to. Well, most people are doing just that. But to try to attempt to be clear about how important it is to receive whatever is happening without any addition, without any overlay, without any interpretation, without any shutting down, without any ignoring, without any warfare, without any peacefare, that can be just as difficult. And what do I mean by that? I'm saying validating, justifying, explaining why it happened. Soft pedaling the whole thing. Don't do that. Don't do anything with it. Or receive it. Receive your life. Don't miss your life. Life comes without warning. There's a few things that are showing up. So through sitting practice of meditation and through the whole practice of the Buddha's Dharma, if you need to go that far, and perhaps you do, perhaps you don't. But I highly recommend that whether you decide to officially become a student of Buddhism, that you at least sit down, watch the mind come and go for every day for a period of time, just so that you get to know yourself better, get to know how your reactive mind works. You're not going to be able to fix anything. When I say that, that's meant to be helpful to you. It's not meant to argue with you or have you come back and say, well, yeah, you can. If I've been meditating for 20 years and I used to be this way, and now I'm different, or now I'm not having that issue or that problem. Perhaps that's very possible. But it's very situational. There are no guarantees. Anybody that says that meditation will get you this or get you that is, I wouldn't say they're deliberately being dishonest, but they're not clear about what this is if they're promising anything, because life comes without warning. No one knows what is going to happen next. Even some of the ways of working with past things or future things that seem to be more tuned into it than modern science, medicine, and so on, philosophy, psychology. Some of those ancient techniques won't tell you exactly what's going to occur. They may talk about the content, but they cannot pin it down. I'm talking about working with I Ching or tarot cards or astrology. All of that has some workability to it, but it won't solve it. It won't tell you what to do or what you shouldn't do, or what if you do this, you do that, and you don't do that if you do this, and if you do this on the 13th of October, then this will happen. Nope, not going to happen. Whatever is showing up in your mind stream, whether it was just triggered by something somebody said 10 minutes ago, or whether it's been something that's been going on for the last 3 weeks and just keeps ramping up, positive, negative, or neutral, but usually if it's bothering you, it's usually something that's negative. Insofar as you can, just receive that. That's difficult to do. You are training your mind to receive whatever is showing up without modifying it at all. Unless you have to. Sometimes things arise and the impulse to push or to pull or something is there, and then you need to receive that part of the mind stream, which looks like sometimes like your own personal will or willpower or something. Probably not. So again, whatever is showing up, just receive. Have that kind of an attitude. Give everything, that kind of generosity. Give everything, your attention and respect. Very, very hard to do. Because whatever shows up, sometimes what is showing up is extremely threatening or possibly irritating or possibly nauseating or possibly anything. And we want to do something about it. And some things we will have to do. It's choiceless. You will have to react or act relative to this showing up or that going away or this moving about in a way that you don't really have any say-so about at all. And I would take it even further to say that the say-so you have is even less than you think. A lot of that lack of being able to control things is covered up quite a bit. And since it is so different with each person and each situation, there is no particular formula. This might sound a little bit formulaic when I say receive the teaching, whether it's the words of the teacher, the words of the Buddha, the words of Vasubandhu, the words of Dogen Zenji, the words of any teaching situation that's coming through the Buddha's Dharma down through the centuries, including your Dharma brothers and sisters, including the person next to you who's practicing with you. Receive as much as you can. Everything is a teaching. Always be a student. Don't miss your life. If you're always a student, you won't miss much. You might still suffer. You might still be bumping up against things. You might still have difficulty, but receive as much as you can. If you're going to produce anything, it depends on what it is that's in front of you or is there. But as far as the teaching, produce devotion. The teaching person and the teacher and the Sangha don't need anything. They don't need your devotion, but you may need to have that kind of expression. And how that shows up for you isn't just worshiping a cult leader. That's actually not devotion at all. That's blindness.
Chizan bowing. In line with what you titled the talk today, Life Comes Without Warning, you've also talked about precious human birth. Is there a way we can work with the preciousness of life to help guide us through what arises? Bowing.
Well, very biased there, of course, is to train your mind so that that which is doing the so-called navigating of the life is not projecting ideas and conclusions and opinions and judgments on what you're going through. So you actually see the river you're going down. You actually see the plants. You see the wild animals. You see the terrain itself. You see it. You receive that, rather than you're going down and you project onto things so much that you don't even know you're in a river. You don't even know that you're in a life stream. You don't recognize your karma because you think you are somebody separate from everything that's happening to you, rather than you are what's happening to you. A precious human birth is that you're dumped down into this situation, and it is your opportunity to see the truth as out of being a living being. If you know how you got here, or how this happened, or if you put a request in to be a human being, I'd certainly like to hear about that, because this just shows up. We showed up as a embryo, and then we came along. I don't need to tell you anything about that, but it's kind of, we just kind of take that for granted. We're here and we're somebody and we're going somewhere, or we've been somewhere, and this is working, that's not working. I like that person, I don't like that person. All of the various things that show up, and then we dump, then we project or lay or laminate opinions and ideas onto everything to protect the so-called self. And there isn't one. There's nothing that is threatened. This doesn't mean you might have intense emotions, get irritated, punch holes in the wall, but there's nobody there. There's nobody punching. But the greed for being somebody and the greed for having something is intense. And this will, if it's too intense, it will take you right down into what, in the 6th realm, what is called the hell realm, with absolute intense rage. But then it can go another way, where it's just kind of, you're just really hungry for that. So then we're in the hungry ghost realm, or you're so enamored of this, but you're not getting what you want, so you close down and take on an animal posture. That doesn't mean you're an animal. It just means you're shutting down. You just are just going to handle your life that way, by ignoring as much as you can. We've all met someone. Maybe it's you're looking in the mirror, but we've all met someone who the way they function, they're intelligent, but they seem to not really hear or notice what's really happening around them. If you ask them about it, they have ideas and opinions about it, but you can tell that they haven't really looked at what's in front of them. And then, of course, the other realms, the realm of the human realm, which is full of passion, also passion, aggression, and ignorance, but in a different level, and it's filled with desire, wanting this, not wanting that, desire for this, and desire that goes away, and then desire that I can just shut down from that desire, and a lot of curiosity about what is this, what is that. There's actually the what question isn't going to arise probably in any of the other realms, including the jealous God realm and the God realm, because they're so busy climbing ladders and throwing spears at each other. So busy getting somewhere, jealous God realm. Or the ones who have made it to some kind of a plateau where nothing else is happening other than they've had trouble getting their Mercedes to start consistently. So it needs to get into the garage. I'll just ride my Harley to work today. Am I being funny or mocking? A little bit, but it's like that. Those people who are in that kind of a heaven realm, or that superior area where they're wondering why everybody's having so much trouble, it's definitely arisen. It will not last. It might last for 70 years, but it's coming apart. And that which is actually real there is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And if that has not been understood or realized, then back around for the next, going to the next classroom, the next lifetime, you should say, or however you want to say it. Are there past and present lives or future lives? I have no idea. Maybe a little bit of an idea. Something's going on there, and we're not sure. We're not really positive. Some people are positive, but it's apparently another lifetime. That's how it appears, apparently, and it is not consistent enough for us to say everyone has had past lives. I would say some people have not at all, and some people have had past lives that aren't even human. Don't believe any of that. Don't disbelieve it. Don't ignore it. simply put. Well,
Chiazan bowing, can you appreciate what is arising without enjoying it? Bowing.
yes, you can. Appreciation, my interpretation of appreciation is allowing something to be what it is. If you take it into the kind of the common understanding of appreciation, like art appreciation, you go into a gallery and look at paintings, it even works there. Come in and allow that painting to be what it is. In other words, you're going to see it, you're going to view it, you're going to look at it, and you're going to, maybe it's something that doesn't please you too much, but here it is on display. And you could appreciate that. In other words, receive it as it is, and receive your irritation, your opinions, ideas, and your judgments about what that's also included. You appreciate that too. You don't do anything with them. You don't validate them. You don't second the motion. You don't do anything with it. You just receive it. More.
Chiazan bowing, it seems that the seduction of appreciation is to get a credential for it. And I'm wondering, is there a way to have negativity arise and appreciate it without the intention of, oh, my appreciation will make this more tolerable?
No. I think you've said it pretty well. And what do we do with that? Just be aware of all of that. There's nothing to fix, nothing to correct, but to be aware of that you're working with that particular word or that indication of what you're working with, and also notice that there's that kind of negativity where it looks like you're reaching for a credential about what you're able to do. So just be aware of that. Don't fix the credential. Don't necessarily go into trying to find a way to not look for credentials. It's about the awareness of that, not about stopping doing it. Even though we might say, don't add, don't subtract, don't divide, as I've said many times. I know you can't stop doing that, but if I say no comment, quite often it's seeing how much we continue. This happens, we continue to add on commentary to it or interpretation to it, so we don't really fundamentally see what it is that was arising, because the first take on what was arising perhaps was threatening, or might make us look foolish if what we're seeing was actually true. So, more?
It just slipped away.
Slipped away. Okay. I like that. Slipped away. Any further questions? Came back?
Came back.
It's like a bird.
Chiazan bowing, the question was around is there activity involved in appreciation? Bowing.
I think the idea of intention, we see something that is maybe our first addition to it is, I don't like it, or that's incorrect, or why is that happening that way? The why question that takes us in circles. Why, because, why, because, why, because. So I think the intention to just receive what is there as close as you can to what it actually is, rather than our reaction to it, or our judgment about our elaboration on it, our interpretation of it. But at the same time, if that shows up, then also receive that. So it's the intention to receive whatever is showing up. More? It's the intention.
Chiazan bowing, is that very simple? Is it a light thing? Bowing?
It could be, if I follow up your question, it could be a little heavy. Could be heavy.
Is it enough to just acknowledge, or just mentally say, I'm going to endeavor to receive this?
I say if there's a strong awareness practice, which means when I say strong, I'm saying at least, if not more, at least an hour a day of sitting meditation and some kind of retreat practice, up to and including block sitting, doing 4-hour block once a week or something. If there's something like that, I'm just generalizing. Some people sitting for 20 minutes every 3 days might be really powerful awareness practice for them. Situational, dependent on that person. And someone else might sit for an hour a day and really just be kind of treading water in that area, rather than slowly having some kind of understanding of what it is that's arising without adding on to what's arising. More?
Cheers, I'm bowing. What is the relationship? How do we relate to a teacher to help us navigate this without it becoming a self?
If you have a teacher, listen to the teacher, receive the teachings, and don't accept them, but receive them. Just receive it, like you receive it, and then you look at it. You don't just teacher said it, so it must be true. It's not. Don't true, untrue belief and everything is not helpful. Don't believe anything. Don't disbelieve anything. Don't ignore anything. Those three, and that puts you in a kind of a no person's land where the reference points are starting to corrode and come apart and fall apart because they're dependently risen. They are dependent on your belief, your fixation on a past and a future. And if when you have a past and a future, you start fixating on a present and you try to maintain the present moment, stay in the present. I don't teach that. More?
Cheers, I think just one more question around when you bring up of the two, keep the principal witness, the slogan from Letitia.
Yes.
I just have a little trouble with understanding how to do that without it becoming, I'm just going to do what I want because it shows up strongly.
Very good. So I'm just going to do what I want. That right there is not keeping the principal witness. That is actually going into an artificial idea that will protect the principal witness from any wrongdoing. So it's just the intention, just that it's sometimes Trungpa Rinpoche would say first thought, best thought. So it's the idea of the initial rising up of that situation. That's the principal witness. It's just that, rather than some kind of ideation that runs in circles, validating one's activity. Well, I'm just going to keep the principal witness, so I'll do what I think I should do rather than what my wife thinks or my teacher thinks or my community thinks or my bookkeeper thinks or my tax accountant or anyone. More? It's a good area. If you can.
I think you just said something along the lines of sometimes it's the situation as it arises that is the principal witness.
Yes.
How do we not abandon such an ambiguous situation? It doesn't have the type of reference points that we're looking for.
Just observe that, and if the abandonment happens, just watch the abandonment. Correct nothing. It's a practice. This is why this is called a practice. This is not an accomplishment. And if it were an accomplishment, then we could get better. We could do silver mind control and actually get some provable results. We're interested in results, but we're not particularly fastened on some kind of demand for some proof that meditation works. Meditation doesn't work. I think I've given several talks on that. Doesn't work the way we think it. But more?
Can you unelaborate a situation?
Oh, that's a very good. I think so. I think there's something to what you're asking about. You, and the way you do that is you notice something happens, and you notice you've started to elaborate on that, and you return. I mean, I'm not recommending you have a device here or some kind of protocol that this is what you should always do. But I'm going to talk about it in such a way that it may show up so that you'll have some awareness around this. Is the mind stream is lying to you most of the time, but the five senses are not particularly lying. Like, this feels like clothing. This looks like light. This sounds like sound or a voice. So sometimes I say stay in the senses. Not maintaining it, but just when you notice you're elaborating something, just return to the senses. Return to the sense of touch. Not as a cure or a solution, but if you do that, if you just return to the sense of touch, how does this feel? And then there might be some commentary that describes that. That's too much. And return to how it feels without knowing what the feeling is. Like, this is comfortable, this is uncomfortable. You actually left the feeling when you comment on it, when you elaborate. So that's why it takes some practice, because the mind stream that has been the mind stream that is full of me, the seventh consciousness, me and my stuff, me and my world, that area has not been seen through completely. We have not seen that the self-centeredness is unreal. We've not seen that. And as long as that still has a grip, then the practice area is going to show up in some way of somehow something needs to be protected there. So when you're trying to keep the principal witness or any thing that shows up as some kind of a slogan or some kind of a way of doing it, if that starts to turn to the side or then just watch that happen, because that will take you into the area that is self-centered. And that's what fundamentally needs to be seen more.
Can there be an over-reliance on the teachings?
Perhaps. Where's the question coming from?
Constantly looking to the teachings for a reference point, like not liking the uncertainty of the situation as the principal witness. So, the perpetual clarification through studying or through the teacher or
somewhat. But if you reflect on it, how many times have you found yourself maybe going through the 59 slogans of a T-shirt trying to find one that fits the particular moment? Have you ever done that? Well, I have. How do I deal with this? Because the T-shirt has something to say about everything. The only thing I've noticed that he has not commented on is what kind of soap you should use. But everything else he's got covered, really. And it's a very open, absolute bodhicitta is covered. And relative bodhicitta is covered extensively. Do this, don't do this, start this. Of the two, keep the principal witness. And just sometimes it's a really tight area of this should be do this and do that. And then other places it's more like vapor or incense smoke. It's so unclear what is actually being said there. So if you are asking me, is that somehow wrong, or does it make it incorrect, or does it make it extra or more confusing to go to aspects of the Dharma? Is that what you're saying?
Can there be an overemphasis or an over-reliance?
There probably won't. The over-reliance will be when you think you're understanding it and you start teaching out of it. You start telling people what to do based on your understanding. Yeah, it's an area that begins to show up. If somebody's been practicing for 20 or 30 years, they're kind of tired of being a student, so they just decide to be a teacher. When they do that, then it's a little fishy. I'm not saying that they couldn't teach the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 Links, the 6 Realms. And I'm saying they couldn't teach the provisional teachings. Of course they could. But if it goes where's this provisional teaching taking us, they might have some difficulty commenting on that, other than just quoting Longchenpa or quoting Dogen. You can quote Dogen without really understanding what Dogen is pointing at and sound quite erudite.
Thank you, Hojo-sama.
Chisho.
Kishabhai, on that question that Chiezan was just asking about Atisha's slogan, what does keep mean in keep the principal witness? What does keep mean?
Well, that's good. So my understanding of it would be, if the back and forth is happening, then however you're seeing it, then go with that, rather than somebody else's idea or someone else's interpretation. That being said, there might be times when this doesn't mean you don't want to listen to other people or listen to anyone about it. But if there's a couple ways I can address that. And the first one I'll say this way: when you're having an either or, should I do this, or perhaps I should go this way, then of the two, keep the principal witness. Then however you see this. And if you're seeing an either or, don't do anything, because there is the principal witness there is just, the principal witness you're keeping is just the nebulousness of the situation. Keep that one. Rather than have somebody else come along, well, the way I'm seeing it, Bill or Vern or Mary, I think you should really tell him what you're thinking about that instead of holding that back. Or I think you should take that job and quit this job. So of the two, keep the principal witness. And if it's confusion, that's the principal witness. I can go on about that a little further if you want me to elaborate or not. Kisho?
Thank you, Sokuzan. That was helpful.
Sir?
Sure, bowing. In Chazon's questions and your responses, you were talking about someone just quoting Dogen or quoting Longchenpa. How does somebody speak out of what's in front of them without just quoting their own experience or their own thoughts?
Well, they might. You might do that. What is it you want to know?
Sure, bowing. My confusion comes out of the way I'm phrasing it. To quote my own experience is still kind of relying on a past and trying to bring that back to what's in front of me and apply it. I'm trying to understand what it is to actually speak out of what's in front of us.
Probably wouldn't say much. Any questions on Zoom? Jake?
Jake Bowing.
So I can't see everybody. There's 47 people on there. I can only see 25 of you. So if you have a question, you can yell. So there's two in the chat box. So maybe somebody out there can keep an eye on that chat box for us. And but that being said, go ahead, Jake. You have a question?
Jake Bowing. Does willpower have a practical role in returning to the wall or staying on the cushion in trying to grow a better habit? Bowing.
So how do you define willpower?
Willpower is forcing myself to do something. Bowing.
What would Nietzsche say about that? The will to power. Am I quoting Nietzsche? Some guy, I don't know. I'm just joking with you. What I'm saying is, whatever occurs, rather than, I would say it's workable as long as you don't make it some kind of, the only way you're going to do this is through just forcing yourself. You might want to go the other direction and just don't do it for a while, so you can get an idea of what the positive, negative, neutral energy that's flowing around there that we keep covering up with some kind of forcing ourselves to sit there. If you're talking to me, which right now you are, I would say stop sitting. I mean, if you're finding you're having to force yourself to go sit. Now, of course, if you live in the monastery, which you've stayed here for a while, so you see what it's like here, you don't have to use any force. You just if you don't observe the forms with your body-mind situation, in other words, attend the book studies, sit in front of the wall, somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder. But not to accuse you, just say, what's going on? Are you doing okay? I notice you haven't been here, perhaps. But when people come here, I don't think we have a lot of difficulty with anyone, do we? I mean, people pretty much, if they want to come to a monastery, they kind of know what they're in for. They're going to sit 6.5 hours of sitting practice every day, other than a few days, like when it's 8 hours. So I'm not sure if I got to what you want to know, but you can ask again if you'd like.
Jake Bowing. How is willpower different from intention?
Intention doesn't look for results, and willpower wants proof that it's working. Intention is a flop. It's just flop. You can't get anywhere with intention, and you don't need to get anywhere because you already are what you're looking for. I'm not trying to have some kind of fancy saying about this. I'm just saying realization is not something else. There are other people that teach us differently. If you're listening to me, apparently this is going to make a little bit of sense to you. You are what you're looking for. That's why intention does work. I intend to see the truth. I intend to return to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Use some kind of a structure, or not. Or if you don't want to, if you're afraid of something that shows up as a 2,500-year-old religion, then do something else. But you might want to train your mind if you at least sit down and look at your mind daily. You might need a teacher, you might not. I needed 2 teachers. I'm always looking at my teacher. That doesn't mean that you guys are my teachers, so don't misunderstand me. Mark.
This is from the chat box, Mark Bowing.
Thank you, Mark.
This is from Deb. How will I know if I'm sitting enough? Is this an area to talk to teacher? Bowing.
Probably, but then again, you can work with it yourself. Try to set, the general recommendation, not only from me, but just in general, is sit for an hour or so a day. Try to set that, and then maybe, and the way I say it is, then if you're at a distance, you can't get to the monastery, and you live somewhere else in the world, you might want to do block sitting, which we also do every Thursday, 7 in the morning till 11 Eastern, and 1 to 5 in the afternoon Eastern. You can actually sit and watch in real time, watch other people sitting there facing a wall. So there's always one person, because it's a form, so there's always someone is assigned to be the timekeeper. And sometimes everybody's off, partying or something. But quite often there's 10 or 12 people in here sitting. Sometimes people, you can come and see someone who sits there the entire 4 hours. With that form, you can get up and go to the restroom, go eat something. You can go out and look out the window, and you can go wander around for a while, just come back and finish the form. 4 hours long each time. Just a way of getting more awareness training in. But how much you're sitting, just that you asked the question, I would say probably not enough. Add 10% on.
Thank you, Bowing.
Sokuzan Bowing.
Yes, go ahead, Sokuzan.
When you say life comes without, or what life comes without warning, as a householder, I think of expenses.
Yes.
How do you work with monks when there's not necessarily a chance of accruing an emergency bank account, and yet there are still things that are unexpected that might be buffered by finances? Bowing.
Well, we're kind of trying to understand that together. I think it's a good idea. People who live at the monastery quite often don't have, obviously don't have what someone with a full-time job with healthcare and everything that is provided there. So I think it's very situational. Someone lives close by, or is a student of this teaching, then we would try to help. I'm not sure if that's where you're going with the question. Could you say more? Can I get closer to what it is you're looking for?
Sokuzan Bowing, when does the paranoia of expenses coming without warning foreshadow the training, which is the reality is that life comes without warning? Bowing.
So if I understand you, what you're saying, this is happening with everyone in a different form, a different shape, a different dimension, a different rhythm. It's just life in general is just happening. And so insofar as you can, receive that and just do the best you can. I'm not sure it seems like there's some other area that you're asking about that I'm not able to get to with that question.
Sokuzan Bowing, you say train your mind. Are there other ways to plan for the unexpected? Bowing.
Well, I'm very biased there. The best way you can plan for the unexpected is train your mind, because everything is unexpected. We don't know what's going to happen. Just look around us, and everything is going smooth, and suddenly this whole thing just goes to pieces. Sometimes it's our own mind stream. We're doing fine. Everything's been fine for the last 3 days, 4 days, 8 days, 2 weeks, half a year. And suddenly we're just swamped with all kinds of negativity with no apparent source. I repeat, no apparent source. And the ego mind, the self-centered mind, tends to look for cause, and it will settle because it gets some kind of comfort out of it. Well, at least I know what caused it. And you don't know what caused anything. There's no first cause. This doesn't mean that aspirin doesn't work. Of course it does, because it is in that relative structure. But as we get further into the so-called relative structure, into things like psychology and psychiatry, and it gets more and more vague about what is actually causing what. You can't really find this because it's just too complicated. So training your mind is not about figuring everything out and being so you know what to do with everything. It's about receiving everything that comes towards you as it is without adding anything onto it. More? Sokuzan.
No, thank you. Bowing.
There's more if you can ask the question. I need your help. If you can ask questions around that, there's more room to respond in there, but I'm not it's not showing up to me as extra, some way of continuing to ramp that up or talk about that more, but there's more room there if you're able to ask more questions. Yes, sir.
Sokuzan's question is sounding similar to like this practice being a preparation for death.
Yes.
What is that preparation?
Well, it can show up lots of different ways. It's just seeing that anything that comes up is not going to last. Everything's impermanent. This very life that we think of, that even though we can intellectually, we think, well, of course I'm here but to say this is not going to last, this is going away. If you really understand this totally and completely and thoroughly, you're already gone. You've already died, because you're actually living. Your experience is happening in a different dimension. I'm not trying to get airy-fairy here, all idealistic about this wonderful dimension where the Dharmakaya. No, it's worse than that. And it's better than that. It's both. It's not two. If you realize it, the suffering or the difficulty or the challenges will still come and go. But the main issue is the person who thinks they're suffering, not the suffering itself. Suffering is dependently risen. There's going to be pain. There's going to be difficulty.
Sure, bowing is thinking that the practice will help our negativity be easier to deal with. Is that a misunderstanding?
I don't think so. That's the idea. Life is suffering. Buddha said life is suffering. Challenging, difficult, painful, however you want to characterize that. There's the classical way is to go into the three types of pain: the pain of alternation, and the pain of the composite. It's difficult, and sitting practice of meditation will help you work with that as you experience it personally in your own life, by seeing fundamentally there's no one home. The subject-object situation has been seen through, and so you don't see anything else. Pretty terrifying. Notice I'm chuckling. Yes. Christina.
In bowing, receiving something happens, there's this combustion, light, whatever you want to call it, and it seems like the container can't receive. Whatever's happening is too big for.
What's the question? I follow you. What's the question?
Okay, so how do we receive when we feel too tight or closed?
You're doing it. If there's a regular ongoing sitting practice, then seeing that you're not able to, seeing that you're shut down, this is awareness. The awareness needs to see the clamp. It needs to see the way in which there's clinging. Because if you just say, well, I'm just going to let go, I just won't grasp, I just, the ego can't do that. But when you look and see the way in which you are grasping, and you see it intimately, closely, without agenda, other than you would like that not to be there, but the intention is more powerful than the greed about getting rid of it. The intention to see the truth is called a spiritual path. You actually transcend the relativity that most of the world is fighting with. War after war after war. In the kitchen, across the ocean, down the block, in the political systems, every war, because there's no real insight into the nature of relative truth. We think certain things are real and certain things are unreal. So it's that grasping. Just the awareness practice will allow you to see the way in which you grasp. And you may continue to grasp and you may not. But what will be different if you see what it is, you won't care what you're doing. I'm not saying you're dismissive, but you see, because your appreciation, to use the word that Sokuzan was asking about, your appreciation is so extensive and vast that you're no longer at war with anything. And people may not see this in you. You might not see that you're on receive all the time. Everything is dumping its load on you. Everything is coming towards you. And if you were still a being, you'd suffer greatly. But since you're not, you see there is no one here, you're like a black hole. Everything can come in. It doesn't make you some kind of a hero or something, or it just means that you're on receive. You receive this world. Don't miss your life. Receive this world. Receive the suffering of the world. This is what is Avalokiteshvara, as a sound observer, is looking down on the world and hearing the cries of the world and receives. Go ahead.
Can we appreciate our clench refusal
Yes.
at the same time?
Good
that
one.
we're-
Yeah, you can. Yeah, just look at the clench. Don't get rid of it. You're actually seeing the truth that the Buddha taught. Life is suffering. He didn't say part of the time. It's suffering. This doesn't mean that you're constantly screaming at the top of your lungs because you're in a pit of fire, but it just means that the suffering dynamic is happening all the time. If not with you personally, with a person next to you, with most of the world is suffering and is dealing with that in different ways. Quite often it's just by ignoring it, distracting ourselves, or blaming someone else. I'm sure you've all noticed that if you're really feeling terrible, one of the ways to get rid of that feeling is to blame something. And relatively, it's probably, there's some accuracy there, but ultimately you've missed the point. You're still fighting with relative truth. You still think that you can squeeze happiness out of finding out who's wrong, or how someone mistreated you, or how you made a mistake because you didn't study the right thing at university, or on and on, just a constant chatter of otherness. Or thank you for the question, sir.
Show bowing. What is it to live a sane life in?
I'm listening.
What is it to live a sane life if it's not about getting happiness out of samsara?
Paraphrase that question. Say it a different way, so I can see how well you understand what you just asked me.
Show bowing. Is there such thing as a good life?
If there's a good life, then there's a bad life. Is that what you're asking me?
Show bowing. It's still coming out of Sokuzan's questions, where it seems like we want to get comfortable here, or we want to be secure in samsara.
Yes.
And
So Trungpa Rinpoche talked about basic goodness and a sane society, an enlightened society. I don't know if that's possible, but I appreciate his idealism there in trying to do that. I don't know. I think it has to be done one person at a time, has to awaken. I don't think a society or group of people can awaken, if that's what you're asking me. You have to transcend good and bad, right and wrong, back and forth, up and down, life and death. Every polarity, that's what we're here. We're here. You've been downloaded into this. You're a spirit, as has been said way before I got here, you're a spiritual being having a physical experience. And this physical experience will not last. It's going away, and it's full of nerve endings, suffering, and it's going away. This week, next week, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or more. But who you are actually is not going anywhere. And the realization of that is we prevent that by by ignoring that openness, because we have started to identify with this body mind as somebody who looks a certain way and has a certain IQ level and a certain shiny teeth, or whatever our attributes may be, these wonderful attributes we cling to. Well, at least we're not black. How many times have you said that to yourself? Count them. And we're always looking for some kind of strategy. Well, at least I'm. Look closely. Use your awareness. Do what the Buddha did. Look deeply into his mind and into what was happening and understood his true nature, which is not separate from anything. It's not a conclusion. The relative things conclude because they've been excluded, so then they conclude. But the spiritual path is about seeing what this is. More? You feel properly scolded? Didn't you?
A question from Marco in the Netherlands.
Marco in the Netherlands.
Is there a method to work with the way we are so result-oriented, or is seeing it enough?
I'll go with the or. I think seeing it, the way you're asking it, but seeing it is enough. It's not like, well, if I see it, then the show's over. No, it is a life path. It is a spiritual path where, as you're a living being, you're here and you're coming and going, and you're attached to the body-mind complex and your ideas and your thoughts and your emotions. You believe in them. So then we have to see what this is fundamentally. So I would say seeing it is enough. But then there's no one seeing it, and there's nothing to be seen. If you want to go into the ultimate understanding of it, nothing happens, nothing occurs. Ultimacy, to use the fancy word, it's already Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, the Nirmanakaya are all one thing. It's just the ultimate situation, the intermediate situation, and the manifestation of a body-mind complex are not separate from each other. You are what you're looking for. Don't believe any of that. Go do something else. Go do something constructive.
A question from Jeremy Gray in Portland.
Jeremy.
You just used the word downloaded. How do you feel about the idea of simulation theory?
Say more about it. I'm not sure I know about downloaded, but you know about simulation theory? You don't know about simulation theory? And you're a fully ordained monk? Anyone know about simulation theory in here? Taoshan must know. No? Okay, Jeremy, I've had enough of your crap. What the hell is it?
Augie bowing.
Yeah, Augie, you gonna tell me?
Yeah, I believe he's referring to a lot of people talking about this being a simulation, that we're in a giant simulation, and people in fairly high places who talk and or listen to are starting to say that kind of thing, that this is a huge simulation we're in. Bowing.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, Jeremy, I'm ready to respond. No, it's worse than that. I mean, the simulation is still a relative statement about relative stuff that is pointing to something that approaches an absolute understanding. But the absolute understanding is there isn't even any simulation.
Augie bowing.
Yeah,
is consciousness. I think when I hear about that, I think they're getting a hint of consciousness, that this is all playing out in consciousness. Is that the case? This is all playing out. Consciousness is always finding its own form, for example. Bowing.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Augie bowing. Does consciousness have an intention? Bowing.
If it has an intention, then it has an intention. If it doesn't, then it doesn't.
Well, what is consciousness when it's not finding its form? Bowing.
Confused.
Augie bowing. Some people refer to the absolute. What's prior to consciousness? Is that what they're pointing at with with words that don't mean much, but is that what that term seems to point at, bowing?
Well, perhaps. So we're still, no matter what we say or what we do, we're still, somebody's hiding from me behind Shota, which is, might as well be 40 or 50 people behind him because he's pretty big. So you could say it that way. And the absolute part of it is because we have this word absolute, which is, there isn't anything there, but we have a word that points to this area. So you can't think about it. You can't be that. You can't be separate from it. So the consciousness finding its own form, which is something that I've said, I'm just saying that whatever consciousness is doing, it will find its nature. If it's ultimate, then it will find that. And if it's relative, then it'll find that. And it is promoted by any kind of polarity that's happening, any grasping, any rejection, passion, aggression, and ignorance will cause that aspect of consciousness, which may be showing up as a physical form, as a 13-year-old in Houston, Texas, that is interested in helicopters. I'm just using that as there's an interest. There's consciousness finding its own form. Very interesting to see somebody very young doing that. Like we have our perfect teaching device here, Rumi, who's almost 3.5. Watching him, how he gets what he wants, how he goes after this and shuts down on that. It's very interesting. It's especially interesting to me because I'm not one of his parents, so I get to leave whenever I feel like it, kind of.
Augie bowing.
Augie.
Yeah. Speaking of Rumi and kids and all, we say, or people say, consciousness seems infinitely creative, to be taking the form of these billions of seeming people and doing billions of things. Does that make any sense, that consciousness is infinitely creative, bowing?
Yes, if you were to look at it and come up with a description, sure. But there's no identity. There's no one creating anything. It's the identity. It also is infinitely creative because it creates a bunch of identities. The self-centeredness, the ego, the narcissism, the seventh consciousness described in the Yogacara tradition is also dependently written. Anything that shows up as other. It's about seeing that. It's not about getting rid of it. It's not easy to do that. It takes quite a bit of time. And the dead ends or the circularity are extremely magnetizing. We have people all over. Just go and spend one day on YouTube with 3 minutes with each channel. Just go down the line and you see how many different ideas people have about everything, and they're all selling and marketing something somewhere. And even I'm doing that. I'm just one of them. I'm just one of a whole slew of people who know stuff and say stuff.
I'll be bowing. So we would say consciousness is taking the form of all those things you just described, bowing?
Yeah. Yeah, everything you see is consciousness, that we change it into an object. We separate, just like we separate the clouds from the sky. But you can't have clouds without a sky. You can't have a sky without clouds. Well, maybe you can have a blue sky. We'll work on that one.
I'll be bowing. When you say sometimes you say we are the Buddha. I guess that's not literally true. Is it true because the Buddha was consciousness as well? Consciousness took the form of the Buddha. Consciousness is taking the form of me, what seems to be me right here. And so in that sense, do we have the same mother, consciousness, bowing?
Okay. I make it a practice never to argue with chemical engineers. And we have two of them here, and maybe more, between Chisho and Augie. We have people who know way more than they should.
That could be the next question.
Yeah, good.
There's a fine line, I suppose, between understanding what people are referring to, because I see the traditions referring to different, or maybe the same things with different words. Like last week, you referred to appearances.
Yes.
Or was that really just another way of referring to forms? And that
Yes.
we said appearances can't be separated from emptiness, but emptiness is a different word apparently for consciousness.
You're starting to lose me now. Be careful.
Yeah, that's how I think I get lost. But
Well,
is that the skillful means? Is the skillful means part of the skillful means to confuse us in that way, Bowing?
well, the way I use skillful means is that it's something that arises out of the clarity, not something you think up and you. I think I'm going to apply skillful means to this person and do something that'll fundamentally help them based on our analysis or our conclusions about their difficulty. Skillful means, if you're functioning out of skillful means or upaya, which is the Sanskrit, I believe, you won't even know how to do it. It won't be something you can write a book about. And if it is, it's probably not skillful means. It's a manipulation of relative truth to look pretty fancy and shiny. You can't do skillful means, even though it's sometimes taught that way. I feel it's taught that way because to help people see that you could actually function in the world where you're actually moving and operating and doing things without really knowing what you're doing. Because coming out of wisdom, there's no identity happening there. It takes unconditional confidence. You have to be unconditionally confident about what is showing up in your mind stream or in your life stream. And that's not something you can just do or be, but it is something you can just stop fooling with everything. Stop meddling with everything so you can see what this is fundamentally without your input coming out of hope and fear. Not easy. And Gilme just reminded me that something about electrical engineers. So is Gilme is he an electrical engineer? No, he can't be. Well, he might be. Gilme, are you an electrical engineer? I was. Oh, he was one. Well, past tense. So electrical engineer. Okay, we've got Yume and Chisho and Augie. Any other engineers here? Who? Are you an engineer? What kind of engineer are you?
Software.
You're a software engineer? Why didn't you ever tell me? Aren't you a fully ordained monk? I just slip in here with that kind of education. We have a software engineer here, and he's what are they? How do you engineer software? With great difficulty.
A lot of people argue software engineers aren't engineers.
Who are they? I mean, the people who argue.
The people who are real engineers.
Well said. So, Augie, would you agree that a software engineer is a software engineer, or are they just a fake engineer? He's shaking his head yes, and he's wearing a kangaroo hat. So, why wouldn't we believe him? So, Chisho, what would you say about software engineers being a chemical engineer?
Chisho, I don't know about software engineers. There is a joke about chemical engineers, though.
What is it?
That is, a chemical engineer talks engineering to chemists and talks chemistry to engineering folks, so that neither of them find out that they are a fool.
Either find out that they're a fool.
They don't figure out that the chemical engineer is an idiot, actually.
Good one. Where are we at? Anywhere? Are we anywhere? Yeah, we should probably close. Is there a final question from anyone? We can address a final question, and if not, we can certainly close.
Kevin Bowing.
Yes, sir.
I remember once you said being genuine might ruin your reputation.
Yes.
How that seems like an example of life without warning. How do we work with having our own reputations devastated by the path, Bowing?
Yeah. I think it's, to use one of my favorite words, is situational. There's no right or wrong way to do it, particularly, but there's a way of working with it which stops what needs to occur. Don't fight with dependent origination. This doesn't mean that if you feel like murdering people, go ahead and murder them. But we can actually meet the difficulty in its own war room, in its own planning room. We can actually go in and meet that. We can see what is happening in the mind stream before we start to go out and make some kind of gestures in public that are going to ruin our reputation. That being said, if what we look at needs to occur, and you've looked at it and you can't do it any other way, then you may have to put that, to say it relatively first, rather than try to say, well, I can't do that because what will people think? What will people think? My mother harped at me when I was a kid. Anytime I would do anything, what are people going to think? What are people going to think? You have dirty underwear. What if you end up in the hospital and they see you have dirty? So it's more about her not doing my laundry, than about me. I'm just using kind of a simple, stupid example, but it's like that. We're so concerned about and the other situations, most likely very concerned about what we think about them. What are you thinking about what I'm thinking about what you're thinking, then I'm thinking about what you're thinking. It just goes on and on and on. So, yeah, it might not be the best place to end, but it certainly is an area where, find out who you are and rather than try to protect some kind of reputation. Now, especially in all of the Dharma teachers down through the centuries, look at really good reputations in some way, but really terrible reputations in other ways. Same thing with politicians and everyone else. Reputation is an interesting area. Final question about that, Kevin, or is that it?
Kevin Bowing. Earlier when I forget the exact word, which is sad because it was a nice word that Chiezan used about kind of I don't remember what it was, but you mentioned coming back into the sense of touch, that the five sense fields don't lie to us in the way that the mind stream does.
Yes.
Is a way of coming into the mind stream as a touchstone without being confused by it?
I feel there is, with sitting practice of meditation, allows us to, through that practice of holding very still and watching what moves, allows us to actually train ourselves to see the truth. But in Buddhism, there's nothing to believe or disbelieve, even though sometimes it's handled that way. I would say just see what's true for yourself, and that can be difficult and painful. And this is why we have a support like
Kevin Bowing. Oh, someone was saying the word was unelaborating. Yes, thank you.
unelaborating. Yeah.
I guess, Kevin Bowing, specifically what I'm asking in the example you used of going into the war room of the mind, is there a way of coming into the texture that war room as a way, is that texture as trustworthy as sense of touch or smell or hearing? Bowing.
If you're going to use the word trustworthy, and I'll say yes. Yeah, it's just as it has its own reality, and that reality is dependently arisen. It has a relative reality, but ultimately it is unreal. And so we just have to meet it where it's at, and it can change the very instant we touch it and start to work with and smell of it and taste it and get into the texture of that reality. It can start to morph into something else, and it is its own little mini lesson on impermanence. Just receive. That which is receiving, nothing happens. If the identity if you've understood who you are, then the whole idea of production or receiving or everything, all of those polarities just collapse into each other. And you're just here. It's just this. And you're unthreatened by anything. Even intense, horrible, powerful emotions can come through. It's like wind blowing through an empty house. You can't find anyone. It's just a metaphor. It's not exactly how it is. It's even worse than that. Very good. We can all, what are we going to do? We're going to dedicate the merit. And now, oh.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shi-fu, shi-son mu-sa mo-ko-sa, mo-ko-ho-ja-ho-ro-mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokuzan Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.